Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Test Those Breasts podcast. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. I'm a retired teacher of 20 years and a breast cancer thriver turned staunch, unapologetic, loud supporter and advocate for others, bringing education and awareness through a myriad of medical experts, therapists, caregivers, and other survivors. A breast cancer diagnosis is incredibly overwhelming with the mounds of information out there, especially on Dr. Google. I get it. I'm not a doctor, and I know how important it is to uncover accurate information, which is my ongoing mission through my nonprofit. The podcast includes personal stories and opinions from breast cancer survivors and professional physicians, providing the most up-to-date information at the time of recording. Evidence, research, and practices are always changing, so please check the date of the recording and always refer to your medical professionals for the most up-to-date information. I hope you find this podcast a source of inspiration and support from my guests. Their contact information is in the show notes, so please feel free to reach out to them. We have an enormous breast cancer community ready to support you in so many ways. Now let's listen to the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn, and today I am super honored and excited to have my new friend, Nancie Steinberg, on my show. Nancie is an experience-rich healthcare communications professional with deep experience in public relations and media strategy across pharma, biotech, hospitals, and major cancer centers like Dana-Farber, Moffitt, and City of Hope. She helps shape meaningful narratives that elevate medical innovation, patient stories, and industry collaboration. A natural connector, Nancie thrives on building relationships and navigating the complexities of the healthcare world. Her work is informed by powerful personal journey as a breast cancer survivor, someone living with chronic myeloid leukemia for 14 years, and a caregiver to her husband who has Parkinson's disease. Driven by resilience and purpose, Nancie brings both professional expertise and lived experience to her advocacy, making her a strong voice for patients, caregivers, and the future of healthcare. Hello, Nancie. Welcome to the show.
Thank
How
you.
are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. I'm really good. I'm so glad that we connected. I know that you sent me a message on LinkedIn and you had filled out one of my forms too on my website, and then I never got it. Luckily, thank you for telling me, because then I was able to check to see if my admin was working, and no, it wasn't. So I'm just really happy that you and I were able to have a conversation just shortly before this interview. I am just thrilled to have you on here. It's right up my alley on my podcast. We talk about healthcare, we talk about advocacy and lived experience and all of that. So lucky to have you, Nancie.
Thank you.
I would love to know who Nancie was before she even got breast cancer.
That's a good question. I would say pretty carefree, except for the fact that my mother had battled breast cancer. So I was aware of its existence, let's just say, besides working in healthcare and knowing about cancer, having probably the most important person in my life diagnosed with it, treated for it, and then it came back. And sadly, she did pass from breast cancer. I sort of had been exposed to it a lot before I was diagnosed. And it sounds kind of strange, but I remember very distinctly my mother in the hospital just saying to me, and I also have a sister, make sure you get yourself checked. And she was referring to my breasts. And around the time that she was so ill because it came back as metastasized, I did feel a lump. So it was sort of, I don't know. I don't know if there was some intuition there on her behalf or whatever, but that's how it came to be, that I felt something. I pointed it out to my doctor and she examined me, and then OB-GYN forwarded me on to a breast surgeon.
Okay. You talk about how your mom was there telling you to make sure that you get yourself checked. What was her circumstance? Was she someone who waited and maybe felt something but then didn't go? What was her story?
No, she had a lumpectomy initially and radiation, and was told she didn't, by her oncologist that she didn't need chemo, and I think that was a big mistake because when it did come back, it was metastasized. I remember at the time, and I was working for the AMA, and so I had a medical background, through my work. I remember us thinking it was a relief, but in retrospect, should have gone at that point for a second opinion because I do think the outcome would have been different.
Yeah.
You
What
know,
year was that?
uh, okay, these are mathematical questions.
I mean, was it in the
Let's see.
9?
No, no, I can tell you, of course. My son was just before he turned 2, she passed away. So 26 years ago.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and,
yeah,
I mean, one of the kind of a common theme that I come across is that, that many years ago and before that, there wasn't necessarily a lot of advocacy or, self-advocacy, should I say, where today we might be saying something different, like, no, we need to, do chemo or and having a voice. I'm just curious how your mom would have responded to that today if she were alive and getting breast cancer and having someone like you in her life, in the healthcare industry and, knowing how to advocate for yourself. It just
yeah.
seems like it's different now.
Yes, yes, and no. I think like I said, it was a huge relief because everyone knows or knew, and it still happens. You can get very sick during chemotherapy treatment. You're throwing up, you're nauseous. So, well, having then been diagnosed and treated, obviously it wasn't a walk in the park, but it was what I had to do to survive, and I think if she knew that, she would have been on board, and, she was listening to her doctor at the time. It still bothers me to this day 'cause I think it was a form of malpractice, really.
Yeah. I can only imagine how that really weighs on you.
Yeah.
But that being said, you have a lot of knowledge now, of course, because of her and because of your own diagnosis. Can you tell us all the things about your diagnosis and what your treatments were and, you know, all of the things?
Yeah, well, what met with the breast surgeon, she did a biopsy, it came back stage 2. She was actually 8 or 9 months pregnant, the breast surgeon, so she referred me to someone else. This is Mount Sinai, and I liked him very much, and a lumpectomy was recommended. This was December '99, 2 months after my mother passed away in October. Had the lumpectomy with the drains and the whole thing, and then the labs came back, the pathology. There were no clear or clean margins. So that meant I had to go back for a mastectomy a month later. I was in the hospital. Cast your mind back to 2000 Y2K. It was that, fear that the computers and everything was going to shut down. Had my surgery with a breast surgeon and the surgeon that I had gone to and a plastic surgeon. And now I'm just trying to think if I did. I think I stuck with him. I don't think I did a second opinion on the surgery, but then when I was about to start chemotherapy, I did interview 3 oncologists.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great that you interviewed them. I mean, not everyone does that. They just get, assigned to someone and they just go with it. And I'm a pretty big advocate for people, interviewing people like even
right,
surgeons, what kind of experience do you have? How many of these
right.
kinds of surgeries do you do a week?
Yeah, I thought for I guess I really am trying to think. I do not think I did look at anyone else's surgery, but for the oncology portion, I felt it was very important that I had a good rapport because I figured it was probably gonna be a long journey. It wasn't gonna be, it's interesting about surgery. You go in, you meet them first, you go in, you have the surgery, you follow up, and then you're more or less done. Yes, you're followed, and I was followed, and my breast surgeon moved to the south, so I had to find another breast surgeon, but it's more maintenance and follow-up, where with a oncologist, it's sort of the heavy duty. I mean, again, it's only a couple of months, but then you still have to follow up on the blood work and then, the annual checkups and mammogram, sonogram, and MRIs and all those things. So I think in my mind, I knew it had to be somebody that I really felt that I would mesh with, the best.
Right,
Bedside
right.
manner. Yeah.
And then you said that, your mom had just passed away shortly before that. Wow. That's not, that must have been really hard for you because I know what it's like to lose a mom that you're, close to. And so how did that set with you? How did you kind of move
Uh,
through the emotions on that?
yeah, it's very interesting. I truly feel that through my breast cancer diagnosis and treatment, I was really exclusively mourning my mother. I wasn't even thinking about myself. I was focused on her. She was my best friend. We spoke every day. I adored this woman, and it was really hard. And I had a little guy at home, a 2-year-old. And, you know, I also believed in continuing to work. I never took any time off. A lot of people do. I would go for my treatment, then I would go into the office. There were some weeks where the next day, no, it was never the next day. It was the following week I would have a reaction. Really bizarre. But I never took time off. I continued to go to work every day. And I remember walking down the street heading to my office, which was Cabrini Medical Center, which is gone now, and crying and being very, very sad about my mom. And also, as we all know, I mean, who's your biggest support system? I mean, yes, I have a lot of friends and I have a sister I'm close to, but who do you really want? It's your
Right.
mom, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, I completely resonate with what you're saying. My mom died in 2019 and it rocked my world and gosh, she's been gone now for, 6 years, and then I was diagnosed in 2022, and I didn't have her. And that even though it had been a few years, I still was really deeply in the throes of mourning her and grieving her,
Yeah.
and I wanted her there, and so I kind of created a little nest of all the a little area about my mom. Like, if you look in the background here, I know my audience they're listening can't see, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that little blouse in the background. That was a blouse that she purchased from me when I first started. I was a cabbie stylist. And I don't know if you know what cabbie is, but it's a women's clothing, women's fashion. And she was so excited that I was a fashion consultant with them, and she bought that from me, and she looked adorable in it. So I just decided to put that on that little statue type thing, and it has my pink little gloves that I got at the Muhammad Ali Museum, like, a few years prior, and little did I know I'd get breast cancer and I'd have these little pink gloves. Anyway, so I've got pictures of her and just everything, her ashes, all of that right around me so that I could feel her with me. I'm sorry that happened and
Thank you.
interesting that, it was breast cancer that took her life. Um so okay, so you get through the treatment and all of that. How was your family with you when you were going through this?
Pretty normal. Pretty, when I say status quo, I don't think anything I don't think I was treated any differently. Like I said, I had a little guy at home, so, when you have a baby, he was 2 years old, you carry on with his activities. At that point, he was in daycare and I was back working. And, the weekends, I live in New York City. I love New York City. I always took advantage of things. So, we did normal stuff. And, initially I lost all my hair. Then I was wearing wigs. And the funny thing about wigs, or not funny, maybe, is that they start to look like crap. I had a really nice wig. It was expensive and you can wash it, hand wash it, but it just never looks the same. And I just remember thinking, like, ugh, I can't wait till I don't have to wear it. And of course, when your hair is growing in, it's itchy and it's uncomfortable. It also becomes summertime, and I know that when I eventually, like, stopped wearing my wig, it didn't look so great, but eventually, the hair grows back.
Right, right.
But I wouldn't say that my family treated me really any differently. Yeah,
Okay,
just persevered, really. Yeah.
that's great. I was just talking to a friend yesterday who was diagnosed with melanoma on her head. And she had to shave her head because they had to put this suction thing on her, and she ended up getting a wig, and then she said the same thing. She actually traveled with it, and she said it's just started looking terrible, And, but before it was really nice, and I actually never
Yeah.
wore my wig during cancer. I got a wig and it's super cute, but I never wore it. I just wore beanies or I went bald around the house, but, I did wear it to a disco 70s murder mystery costume party, which worked out perfectly fine.
I
But,
wound up
yeah.
donating mine. It was a nice wig. I just didn't care for it after it been around for a while.
Yeah. Well, so what are you doing today? Like in your survivorship, obviously you've got a lot of experience in the healthcare industry and your advocacy work. What are you doing? What can you share with our audience?
Sure. About 14 years ago, which you mentioned, I developed CML, which is a blood cancer, and that came out of left field, but I never talked about it ever. That was my private secret. Besides immediate family, I was concerned about job discrimination. I was concerned about people's reaction because even with breast cancer, people, friends mean well, but sometimes the how you feeling or how you doing, the way it's said is almost with, like, pity, and I didn't like that so much, so certainly when you say you have a form of leukemia, that's a dirty word, it carries a lot of weight, or people think, "Oh god," that sounds really, and it can be, but, I'm fortunate, it's been well managed by medications. I did have to switch once due to a side effect, but, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, and I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of that. I'm very happy with that. And a year ago, I attended a little intimate conference. A gentleman I knew from another life, not another life, but I knew him from, I don't know, another world, and he started writing about CML and talking about it, and he's got this conference, and I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, you're the only one I know that has CML." And, he told me about the conference, and I went. It was in New York City. It was his 3rd year doing it, and, he just had one, which I went to last month here in Westchester, actually, and it was at that conference, everybody got up and, the people that were speaking shared their story, and I thought, I could share my story. I've worked with patient advocates in my work experience. I worked a lot with Pfizer Oncology, and we worked with lung and breast cancer patients. And I just suddenly felt like maybe it wouldn't be so bad if I did expose myself and come out as having a blood cancer, because breast cancer, unfortunately, it's so prevalent. People, it's almost, with the statistic 1 in 8, 1 in 7 women, but with the blood cancers, it's a little, you don't hear as much, I guess, about them. So that's when I made the decision that I wanted to share, and I started doing it on LinkedIn. I've been on a few podcasts like yours. I'm happy to help and I want to help. I'm doing a little work with a pharma company on helping them with their materials that are for patients to see. They want to know if it's the right presentation and information. I'm sorry, I don't mean information. I mean that it's presented in the right way. And, I've now joined a few different groups, women health advocates, ACE, which is Advocates for Collaborative Education. And I'm meeting people with all kinds of cancers. And it's same with the conference I went to. That wasn't just breast or CML, it was all cancers. And collectively as a group, we're trying to make things better for patients, and awareness and prevention and fighting for coverage of certain diagnostic tests. So that's where I'm at. I'm still working as a healthcare PR professional, and I'm doing this as well. So, in fact, I was supposed to be in Washington. I decided that with the travel, Thanksgiving was a little crazy, but they have an
Yeah.
event coming up in the spring that I'd like to go to. That one is Women Health Advocates, and that one is not just cancer, it's also reproductive rights, endometriosis, political topics, but obviously they also have they cover cancer, and they have an early breast cancer coalition as well.
I wonder I probably will know some people that go to that. I have heard of that before. I know
Right.
that, I follow Dr. Elizabeth Potter. She is a breast surgeon, a microsurgeon, and I've interviewed her as well, and she is in Austin, Texas, and she's all about advocating and fighting for the rights, insurance type, rights and getting breast surgeries covered, and it is a
Right.
mess out there. It's a mess. And I mean,
Well,
and having people like you out there fighting for those for all of us is extremely I'm grateful for it. I know that. And I like to learn as much as I can. So I'm going to the breast cancer symposium in San Antonio next week. And so I'll be bringing back a lot of education, for the nonprofit and just try to get that out to as many people as I can about research
absolutely.
and,
Absolutely. And it's interesting because it does make a difference. I was on a call earlier with women health advocates, and they're adding a lot of the people in Congress they're meeting with, listen to them, hear them, and are including some of the language that the group is advocating for. And I personally am a very strong believer. If I had to have a platform, I think every woman should be examined by a breast surgeon, whether you have a suspicion of breast cancer or not. I truly believe that they are trained and they have the certification in breasts that OB-GYNs do not have. I mean, yes, they work on the top and the bottom, but they're really experts in the bottom. Let's face it. They deliver babies. In terms of, the top, it's just not, I don't think, the priority in their medical education that either needs to exist or should exist, but, so that's just something I believe in. I think seeing a breast surgeon makes a difference.
that makes total sense, and that is a huge good piece of advice for our audience out there. What can people like me I mean, I know some of the things, but, maybe we're just we'll talk to everyone as a whole. What can we all do out there to be included in advocating and using our voice to be able to, improve the system, improve insurance issues, and all of that?
Well, I think the biggest thing is talking about it, and what do I mean? Like, in October, do a LinkedIn post about go get your breast check, or on Facebook. And it might be that icky sort of uncomfortable topic, but the reality is you really need to have more people talking about it. And I mean, there's a known fact that in some of the minority communities, Black and Hispanic in particular, that they're fearful and they don't go, or they don't prioritize the mammogram, and unfortunately their outcomes are often worse, partially because they're not going when it could be caught early, but also because 'cause they're not going at all, and then when it's caught, it's too late. So,
Right.
and I think there is some predisposition, I'm not sure exactly, but to a higher rate, and, I think the more people they see talking about it in their own community and online just raises awareness. And, if you
Absolutely.
yeah, I did a post on Facebook and a few people wrote to me, "Thanks for the reminder. I'm booking it today or I'm booking it tomorrow." And obviously, it doesn't just need to be in October because that's not the only month that people go, but it helps.
It does, and that's why, I'm actually in the early stages of planning a big fundraiser for Test Those Breasts. It's a nonprofit, so, and my main goal is to raise money for scholarships to give to people that are in need of funds to for whatever reason, whether it be traveling to get breast surgery or need a wig or get a mammogram or whatever it is, but I know that the Black and brown community also, there are a lot of barriers too. And some of those are emotional barriers. And so I do think that talking about it as much as possible is very important. And I actually chose the month of May, hopefully, knock on wood, if it, I'll get some wood there, knock on wood, that it actually unfolds this way to have that event. And I purposely chose not to have it in October just because I want to remind people all year long, right? Yeah, so that's a really good point.
And also Mother's Day
Yes.
is May, so
Yeah,
yeah.
you're right. Yeah, Mother's Day. That's a that maybe that's the day I should have it on. Uh, so, well, this has been really great talking with you about all of this. I think it's really important for people to know that there are people out there like you, rooting for them and advocating for them and providing education and learning and bringing that to the table. So I just really appreciate your being on this podcast to share. I know that in the show notes I would love for me to put contact information or any resources that you might be able to share. I do put those on my website after the episode, so we will definitely do that. I would love for to kind of wrap this up by asking you, I know that you've given a lot of advice already. Is there anything else that you can share with us that can help people who have never even been diagnosed? I know that I knew a lot about breast cancer before breast cancer, but then of course when I got diagnosed there was so much more I did not know and still learning to this day. So, and I know that usually the piece of advice is go get checked,
Yeah.
but whatever you can add would be amazing.
Okay, well, one thing I'm gonna say, it's sort of an answer, but maybe not exactly. Be comfortable with your medical team, meaning if it doesn't feel right, go get a second opinion, or even if it isn't essentially a second opinion, but you're not clicking with that person. It's very important to feel heard and understood. And I think that's like a key factor. Now, having said that, having I was referred to the hematologist oncologist for CML by my breast oncologist. He was a young man and very, very, like, serious, and I kind of well, not when I walked in because I didn't know what my prognosis was, but I wasn't sure I loved him. Now I know love is a strong word, but at first I was, like, a little hesitant, but over time in that example, I'm glad I stuck with him because I shared that with my oncologist, my breast oncologist. I was like, "I don't know, his bedside manner." He said, "Oh, you don't have to stay with him. I just know he's really good and smart and so forth." And he really is all of that, and, he now laughs at my jokes, and we have, like not that I'm there to make him laugh, but I don't know, it took some time, but I guess I'm sort of contradicting myself here. But if it's really black and white that it's not a great fit, move on. Like, find something else. You don't have to explain that to anyone, really. And, go find support wherever it works for you. For some people, it's their family. For some people, it's a therapist. I've been seeing a therapist. It helps me talk, talk through everything because sometimes there's things you don't want to say to your family or your friends for whatever reason, and it makes a difference, and maybe it's your pastor or your rabbi. I don't know, but make sure you do find people that you can connect with for
Yeah,
sure.
find that community. No, I totally agree. I'm connected to a couple of community members here in our area, and I do think that it's so important to talk to someone. And I've got a great therapist myself that I still see to this day. She's even helped me process other things since my diagnosis, which has been great. I told her we could be friends on the outside.
Well, she's not going to like that.
She did like it, but we won't be. I mean, we both agree that we just really resonate with each other, and I'm just able to have those deep, hard conversations, and she is somebody who listens, but she also has action type ideas for me, which is great because I haven't always had that in the past. So yeah, no, that's those two pieces of advice are amazing. One, making sure that you feel good about going and getting a second opinion, listen to your intuition. Do you resonate with that person? If you feel like you want to stick around and see where it goes like you did, and obviously it turned out great, or just make sure that you go and interview a few more just to see, what the
Right.
difference is. So no, that's so good. Well, I just think that I loved our conversation. This has been great.
Me
I'm so
too.
glad that you reached out to me and we're lucky to have you out there. I'm glad to be connected. Is there anything you would like to leave us with before we disconnect today?
Well, we did have one addendum to my story.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it is, it's best case scenario, but since I had my most recent breast MRI last month, I've been diagnosed with DCIS. Some people may not know that term, ductal carcinoma in situ. And basically, it's a zero cancer, but it requires surgery. And
Surgery.
because of my family history and that I have possessed genetic markers, I am opting for a mastectomy. So next Tuesday, I'm doing that, and, I have a good outlook about it, I have a good attitude, it's kind of a pain, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but it is what it is, and again, the message there is just to stay on top of all your diagnostic tools, meaning it was, my oncologist was always a big proponent of breast MRI for me in addition to the mammogram, sonogram, and I know insurance isn't gonna cover it for everybody, so I'm not gonna necessarily say everyone's gotta have a breast MRI, and as we all know, it also produces a lot of false positives, but I do believe mammogram and sonogram should go together for every woman, but all that to say, onwards, right?
Are you doing a double mastectomy?
I had a mastectomy with reconstruction 26 years ago.
Okay, got it.
So it's the one breast, and I am having reconstruction with implants, which I never thought I would opt for, but my choice was between that and then the bigger surgery, which is what it's advanced in 26 years, but I was offered implants are what similar to what I had 26 years ago, done a little differently now. And my plastic surgeon said if I don't even like the outcome of the implant, I could still go that route. That kind of surprised me, but we'll see.
Go the route of, deep flap type surgery?
Yes, but
Okay,
from my above my buttock
from the back,
because
yep,
because they've used my stomach, they
yes,
can't go there again.
right.
Um,
Because you
yeah,
had the deep flap, you had the trans flap. Yes,
trans.
yeah,
What
so
is?
once
I'm not even sure what deep stands for. DIEP.
it is deep inferior epigastric perforator flap.
Okay, whatever that means.
So I know that there's the difference between trans flap and deep flap is with trans flap, they compromise the muscle. So therefore, it's a longer recovery. I mean, as you probably remember, it's a big recovery, and so is deep flap, but they don't compromise any of the muscle. So I still have my stomach muscles intact. So they are going in to do S gap, and that is right above the buttocks. I've had quite a few friends who have had that, but S gap is something that they use from behind, and so that's if you don't like the implants, they can just take that out and fill it with yeah, that's a good option there if you don't care
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
implants, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, so that brings me to this idea that once you get breast cancer, it definitely can come back even if you have a mastectomy.
Right,
And so that's why it is important to make sure that you are still getting screened.
right,
And they say that you're not supposed to get mammograms after the deep flap, that just, the MRI or an ultrasound, so which is what I get. But it is important to pay attention to your breast health, even past a diagnosis and getting past treatment and all of that. So I am so glad you brought that up. And so on Wednesday, it's next Wednesday you have your
Tuesday,
surgery? Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Okay. Well, I will be thinking about you. I
Thank
will
you.
be at the breast cancer symposium.
Right,
So I
right.
will be sending you good energy. And what time is your surgery?
Well, that's the thing. I won't find out till the night before, but I will be going in at 10 AM to get the dye into my breast, the shots from nuclear medicine. So I'll be hanging around from 10 on, more or less, because it's a breast surgeon, excuse me, and a plastic surgeon, they have to coordinate their schedule, and it's sounding like it could be early afternoon. I mean, best case scenario if it was noon. That's how I see it. I mean, but it might be later, and I stay overnight.
Okay. I was just
Yeah.
going to ask you that.
Yeah, so and I even asked my plastic surgeon, "Hey, is there any chance I could stay another night?" Because 'Cause I'm not rushing home mostly because, hey, Doesn't everybody want that 24/7 care? Not that the nurses are always around, but, when I come home, I'm home, I mean, thank God my younger son will be home for Christmas break so he can help. But, with my husband, it's hard. He doesn't carry things anymore. He really can't. He cooks, but not, even with his cooking, he has to be careful, but he can't carry anything. And I want my coffee brought to
Yep.
me. I'm going to want a sandwich.
Yeah,
So,
there's nothing wrong with a little doting, right?
right. But so bottom line though, the plastic surgeon said there's a movement, would you believe, even after a mastectomy to go home the same day. And the only reason they win the fight is for the fear of blood of they have to make sure you stop bleeding because better you're here than at home.
The first day I stayed in there for a couple of nights. Second time, I was out that next day.
Oh,
I wish you all the best.
thank
Again, I
you.
will be sending you all the good energy. Okay,
Thank you.
now do you have anything to leave us with before we disconnect?
Be positive, always have things to look forward to no matter what's going on in your life. And I'm a strong believer in that. Whether if it's a trip, a little weekend trip, whether it's seeing your kids or reading a book that you had on the side like always have something to look forward to.
I
And
love
we're all
that.
gonna have good days and bad days. I mean, that's whether you're healthy or not healthy. Everyone has good days and bad days. As my dear departed dad used to say, "This too shall pass."
Yes, for sure. Well, you are a ray of sunshine, that's for sure, and I'm so glad again
Thank
that
you.
we did that we connected and
Me
we
too.
got to have
Me
this
too.
conversation. I feel like we will be in touch moving forward. All
Sounds
right,
good.
Nancy. Well, thank you
All right.
again for
Thank you.
joining. And thank you to my audience for joining us on this episode of Test Those Breasts. And we will see you on the next episode. Bye for now. Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open to guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. And as a reminder, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast will truly help build a bigger audience all over the world. I thank you for your efforts. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.